moving screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The paupers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Ways, where tonight we are talking about electromagnetism. We're talking about it in terms of traditional scientific views as well as the alternative views, and we're also connecting that to the ancient prehistory as well as the potential future, all timelines. As always, we're going multidimensional here on Rogue Ways, and I am excited to do it. What we're talking about tonight is, for me, very close to my heart because my first fictional novel, before I really knew that I was channeling through this novel, and it's a trilogy. And so the first book in the trilogy is Sine Curve of Aeons, Vitalis. And you can find this on my site. As I mention often, you can find it on Audible. Listen to it if you're an audio listener. You can find it on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, lots of different places. And it's a fantastic book. And the whole trilogy is exceptionally worth your time. But what we're talking about tonight actually is something that essentially occurs eventually in the book. And I didn't put that even together until basically the past year. I wrote this book. The first copy was finished in, I'm going to say 2014. So it's, coming up. God, yeah, we've surpassed the 10-year anniversary of the first book in the novel. And so it's taken me that long to understand what actually happens at the end of my own book, which is, again, I tell people, like, it's that's what channeling is. Sometimes stuff comes through and I'm not even really understanding fully the depth and complexity of what it is, but it always blows me away because it always echoes in reality in multiple ways. And so, I don't want to spoil the book for you. And so, because my hope is that you've read it or you're going to read it. And so I'll try to be somewhat sensitive to that and not do spoilers, and also just say everything we're talking about tonight comes into perfect conclusion in this fictional channeled novel. I've said before too, I know a lot of authors who have that same sort of connection to the actual ideal, which is another dimension that can channel through and feel genuinely inspired. They feel as though their characters are real people. They feel as though the events that happen to their characters actually happen. I used to hear authors talk about this, and I thought, well, that sounds like schizophrenia. So I'm pretty sure a lot of artists are essentially schizophrenic, but in a well-balanced way. And then it happened to me, and I was like, oh, I totally get it now. Because I genuinely feel like I didn't write a fictional novel, but that I described actual happenings and that these things happened. And the more I have lived since writing this book, the more I feel like that is actually what happened. So I actually feel like I just wrote our human history and channeled it through as a fictional novel. Anyway, I hope you want to read it. Let's get into the show itself because we have so much to talk about tonight. Rogueways.org is the site. Again, like I said, you can find the book I just mentioned, its sequels, and some other channeled inspirational messages from the spiritual ancestors, which are our ascended masters that have come before us. Trinity's Genesis, A Future Once Removed, is the most recently finished fictional novel. Again, that's the third in the series. The second is Earth, A Trough in Time. And Vitalis, like I said, is the first book in that series. You can buy all three of them together from me. You can get signed inscriptions. I sell the electronic copy if you're an e-reader. Anything is here on the site for you. I also have one-on-one sessions you can schedule right here from the site as well. Many of you just already know where to go, and you've got the Calendly page, bookmarked, and you just go straight there to book. But you can find the portal through my site here under Schedule a Session. That Celestial Attunement is coming up. I believe that's on the, oh man, now I don't even remember. I think it's the first. I think it's March 1st, we're finishing our celestial attunement. This is a super powerful upliftment and blessing and attunement. If you know, you know. I try to not talk about it too much because people are either like understand the spiritual dimension or they just don't yet. So they think it's whatever they think it is. I don't know. So, but if you know, you know, and you definitely want to come to this if you know. So come to the Celestial Attunement. It is a group event via Zoom. Everything I do is via Zoom for the most part. I do also have ceremonies I do with people one-on-one. You're allowed to apply to do a ceremony. I don't just do them for anyone. If my guidance is that we should do it and you want to do it and your guidance is that you should do it, then we'll do it. And if it's not, we won't. But if you're interested in plant medicine journeys, then that is something I also do in person. You're welcome to come apply. I'm doing the retreat this summer in Crestone, Colorado, summer solstice retreat. It's just going to be epic. I am incredibly excited. If you've been called to it, good. There's still people who are signing up and coming with us. It's going to be exceptionally powerful as well. If you think those celestial attunements and things like that are powerful, this is multi-day in one of the most sacred locations on planet Earth. So meet me there. We'll have quite the time. If you're into it, go check it out. And also there's the shop. New orgone has been added to the shop and it is striking. So I hope you go check out the orgone and other things in the shop at rogueways.org. And of course, my newsletter. I do have an email list. I send out emails sometimes, but otherwise, most of what I produce is here on Substack. So if you're signed up to the newsletter and you're not signed up to Substack, you should definitely also be signed up to Substack. They are technically different things. Substack is where I publish my writing. That is articles, research, essays, and also a bunch of the channeled material. Again, as the spiritual ancestors are sharing messages with me, I channel them through and I share them here with you. So if you're interested in that, that is all here on Substack, rogueways.substack.com. There's plenty here for free or paid subscribers, both. And I can't wait to see you there. So let's get into it. We're talking electromagnetism. We're going to start at the beginning. And here's just your basic definitions and key concepts of electromagnetism. And this gets a little bit deeper than we need to. We're going to sometimes dip a little bit deeper in some of what we're looking at today. But, as ever, you are best served by taking in what is easily taken in. And anything that is just like, what does that even mean? You just let it go. You just let it go and you just keep going. So that's how your brain and you learn. You have to encounter things multiple times. And the first couple times you encounter something, sometimes it is perplexing. Don't let that make you stop. There's no reason to stop taking in information because some of it is perplexing. You just go, okay, I don't know. I don't know what that means. And that's okay. So we're going to do that together here today too. So it says electromagnetism is the fundamental force that governs the interaction between electric charges and magnetic fields. It is described by Maxwell's equations, which unify electricity and magnetism into a single theory. So, at some point we thought of electricity and magnetism as separate. And then we said, oh, these are actually two halves of the same equation. These are actually the same thing, just in sort of different directions or different manifestations. So electric fields, it says, are created by electric charges. Magnetic fields are created by moving electric currents. So an electric charge that's stationary, not moving, is electric. And if it's moving, it's magnetic. This is interesting. This is going to, again, already go beyond me as far as how does that actually work? Because in my, electricity lines in my walls, it seems like the electricity is moving, but we still call it electricity. But so we'll just let that go. Say, yes, this is what's happening. It says a moving charge or a changing electric field produces magnetic fields. So maybe it's just that the magnetic field is also around the moving electricity. Sounds like that's what's happening. Electromagnetic induction is a changing magnetic field, which induces an electric field. And a changing electric field generates a magnetic field. So yeah, that is it. And then there's the Lorentz force. I'm just going to kind of skip past that. And then there's electromagnetic waves. And it says when electric and magnetic fields oscillate perpendicularly to each other and propagate through space, they form light and all other forms of electromagnetic radiation. It says this force is responsible for almost all non-gravitational interactions in daily life. Electricity, magnetism, light, and even chemical bonds since they rely on electromagnetic forces between electrons and nuclei. So if you remember chemistry, if you ever took chemistry or if you're into chemistry at all, that is how you figured out, which things can bond and which can't and whatever. Is you like valence shells and like positive and negative, and it had to all work out in order for it to be a good bond or to produce some other result. And so it's all electric. It's all electric down to that level. And when it says here, this is the accepted definition, but this is what is going to be challenged. If you've never heard it challenged before, it'll be challenged here tonight, that the electromagnetic force is responsible for almost all non-gravitational interactions. So it's basically saying everything is electromagnetism except gravity. And just on its face, that already doesn't really make sense, right? Like if I'm being fed this, I'd be like, well, why? Why would gravity be the one exception in the universe to this electromagnetic thing that's going on, which is, again, everything's electric. Our body's electric. Everything's electric or magnetic, which is the same thing. So everything's electric except gravity. Seems weird. Seems like maybe that's not true. And so we'll just jump head first into this. And again, we're going to let most of this go, and then we're going to synthesize it down to sort of like a Pressey's version of Ken Wheeler. But is this Ken Wheeler? Yeah, we're on Ken Wheeler now. Ken Wheeler is I'm going to say alternative radical thinker in this realm. He's a contemporary right now. I believe he's still alive. I believe he's still making YouTube videos even. If not, he very recently died. So he's right now. He goes into this whole thing that actually everything is, I'm not even going to, I'm going to go actually to the summary first, and then we might come back and look at some pictures. That makes actually way more sense. And by the way, all the summaries we're looking at today are via ChatGPT. And I am a big fan. This is what ChatGPT does best. If you have good questions, you get really good answers. If you didn't know, for example, to ask the question, how does Ken Wheeler's cosmology and worldview and his idea of electromagnetics compare to the standard model that is accepted in materialist science? Because you can answer that question, you can get this answer. It's pretty cool. So instead of going through this document and trying to weed out what we can from really intense scientific descriptions, we're gonna summarize first, and then we're gonna go look, because some of the stuff he points out is so cool. Okay, so Ken Wheeler, it says, presents an alternative, highly unorthodox interpretation of electromagnetism, gravity, and the nature of the universe, diverging from mainstream physics. His ideas draw heavily from classical metaphysics, Neoplatonism, and alternative interpretations of field theory rather than relying on Einsteinian relativity or quantum mechanics. He basically does away with the problem of gravity and unites the whole entire field. And so he says field theory is over particle physics. He argues that everything in the universe is fundamentally fields, not particles. I'm like, well, that's just true. Did people not know that? But this is how it feels to me a lot of the time when I'm dealing with materialists, when I'm dealing with people who are really kind of stuck in hierarchical material, just of whatever you want to call all the bullshit of our society right now. Like, that's how it often feels. I'm like, oh, is that how you've been thinking of things? Like, that's confusing to me. And maybe it's because I've always been able to see auras. I'm just like, obviously everything is a field of information. But even if you just think about what they tell us atomic structures are, and like the way matter is built, it still becomes obvious, because you're like, well, here's a hand, but technically what's happening here is there's a million little electric fields, and they're all moving and interacting in different ways. And actually, most of this is empty space. So I can't put my hand through it. It feels solid to me, but that's an illusion. That's actually because of all of those bonds and electric charges and how they interact with each other. So is that not already obvious that everything is a field? If we're saying it's empty space, which is also ridiculous. How would anything be empty? Okay, but we're saying that, then what else, what's in that space? Well, like the field of all the other things that we can look at and say, this is matter, this is an atom, here's this, that's what it is, right? So, okay, anyways, so I'm like, yeah, obviously this guy's right? This is my thought process. He says everything in the universe is fundamentally fields, not particles. He describes the universe as dielectric energy field system, where electromagnetism, magnetism, and gravity are all different expressions of a singular force. So when I say he does away with gravity, it's not necessarily he does away with it. He describes it in terms of electromagnetism and fields. Again, gravity is this like huge problem for materialist scientists in the standard model. They've never, ever been able to prove that it exists. They can't find any way to make it work. But it has to exist with all the other ways they look at the world. But if you just switch in these few ways we're going to look tonight, and all of them are very similar to each other in how they solve the problem, then the whole problem is solved. I'll tell you the secret. There's two reasons why they don't want you to really think about it in these alternative ways. One is because it makes free energy possible, and free energy frees the world, and now no one can control it. Two is because it also means that we're probably headed towards massive Earth cataclysms. And they don't want you to think that, because then all society falls apart. These are two pretty good reasons to hide it from you. So it's one of the actual, if you want to call it a conspiracy theory, feel free, but it's one of them that actually makes sense. So magnetism is the primary force. He proposes, this is Ken Wheeler still, that magnetism is the fundamental principle underlying all forces, including gravity. He sees magnetism as toroidal. And this is also becomes common in all of these alternative fields, this toroidal system. Again, I just talk about this like it's fact because I see it on the spiritual level, because I see it in people's auras, because I've been all throughout the universe and traveled there directly. And so I've seen it in the universe on macro structures, including on these micro levels. So it's not confusing to me. And it's for me like something I'm like, yeah, everything is a toroidal field. Isn't that obvious? Apparently it's not. So he is alternative thinker because he thinks that everything is this toroidal field. And if you're not sure what toroidal means, it's like that spinning outward energy. There's usually a center. It sometimes comes out from both centers, but that's actually because there's a donut of space and or energy around that. Maybe I'll pull one up for a second real quick. So if you haven't seen a toroidal field for some reason, you can see it. I have to type in the weirdest way now because of my microphone's placement. But here you go. That's not big enough. Let's see. That didn't get much bigger. Let's try this. Oh, there you go. Zoom in. Here's a toroidal field. So you can see it's sort of a donut shape around this guy, but energy is coming up and out the top and down and out the bottom. And that's part of that too. If this were the universe, all of it at once, there'd be a giant bright light here in the center, and all of material matter would be spinning out and up. And all of this donut would just be empty space, which again is not actually empty, but we'll call it empty space for now. And then it would be flowing down and around. And we're right down here, like where like the root chakra energy is like exiting the vortex, right? That's where Earth is. That's where the Milky Way is. Pretty far from the center, but that's a toroidal field. That's a toroidal shape, I should say. And so he proposes this is real too. He sees magnetism as a toroidal field with centripetal or contracting and inward and centrifugal expanding and outward motions, which account for attraction and repulsion. Again, this is what I saw before I had words to describe all of these things. This is what I drew. This is what I have received over and over again, even when I wasn't traveling through the universe. And that's what it looks like. That's just what it is. So gravity is electrical phenomena. He said, instead of treating gravity as a separate force, as in Einsteinian physics, Wheeler argues that gravity is simply dielectric acceleration a result of electrostatic field interactions. He denies the existence of warped space-time, suggesting instead that what we call gravity is the result of objects being drawn toward a charge imbalance in the dielectric field. If you just pare that down to energy is going to move in a way that balances it, then it just makes sense, right? You blow hot air somewhere, it's going to, right? We've heard this all the time. Hot air rises. Cold is going to rush in, and hot is going to go out and expand. Cold is going to contract and fall, and heat is going to rise. Like energy is going to move in order to balance itself out until everything's the same temperature. So he just sees electricity in a similar sort of way, right? Which, again, why wouldn't it be? And he denies the existence. Oh, this aligns gravity more closely with electric field interactions rather than mass-based curvature. Mass is another one of those things, too. If you look at it, isn't it just electric in itself, too? You're like, this is so densely packed with atoms. Well, they're all electric too. I just don't see where the difference comes in. I don't see where you turn this into gravity, especially since you can't prove it and can't find it. Rejection of Einsteinian relativity and quantum mechanics. He believes relativity is a mistaken concept based on mathematical abstractions rather than physical realities. Instead of time-space curvature, he sees the universe as structured around field pressure mediation, how energy moves through the field, or right, that it wants to balance itself out. Toroidal and hyperboloid structures as the foundation of reality. He suggests that the universe's fundamental structure is a combination of torus, magnetism, and a hyperboloid dielectricity, which is that coming out either end, right? Again, I saw this before anyone ever could have even tried to explain that to me. And that's what I have described the entire time. Now, how would I make that up, right? And again, it's what auras look like too. It's from the micro to the macro. So he is more right on than anything else. As far as what I can know myself, and I don't expect you to take my word for it. I expect you to learn how to astral travel and go figure it out for yourself. But, this is reality. When you actually look at reality, that actually this is what makes sense. So this changes the view of gravity and electromagnetic universality. It unifies the forces. There's no need for mass as a cause of gravity. Magnetism and dielectricity become fundamental rather than having gravity be part of the fundamental way the universe works. And it also has ancient philosophical parallels. Ken Wheeler apparently links his theories to Neoplatonism and Pythagorean thought himself, suggesting that modern physics is rediscovering ancient metaphysical truths. That's also obvious to me. And I think to anyone who actually takes seriously the study of prehistory or ancient history, you can just see that. It's like the flower of life symbol existed way before any type of modern physics. And the further we look into the field, I'm losing the word for it, but when we get to Nassim Haramein, we'll see it closer. The flower of life is actually the shape of everything. It's the shape of the interaction of all things. It's we'll get back to the word when we get there. But how did they know that? How did they draw this perfect flower of life? How did the Pythagoreans know that too? With their simple tetractys. God, I wish I could show you this other image. I'll have to put it in a Substack post soon. But it's crazy. It has every single, this simple, if you don't know what a tetractys is, I'll at least pull that up. So a tetractys and Pythagoreans have been super synchronous for me lately. So I'm not surprised they're coming up in this show. But we're going to pretend the internet isn't good enough to pull up a simple tetractys. So this is a tetractys, and these triangles drawn within it, cool, fine. That's not even really the point. The point is actually just the dots. This is just a simple pyramid. At the point is 1 dot. The next layer down is 2 dots. The next layer is 3. The next layer is 4. It represents everything in the universe in this simple symbol. And if you then make concentric circles coming out of each of these circles, you then get this vibrational, harmonizing, beautiful, the flower of life is in it. The Star of David is in it. Like all sacred geometry can be found in it easily. You're not like hunting for it. It's all there. It's crazy, actually. I'm not often blown away by symbols, and this one is blowing me away. It's blowing me away. This is just because it's so simple. We've got unity. We've got duality here. We've got the trinity of all things. We've got then everything and then this also represents the base 10 system, because there's these 4 layers, 1, 2, 3, and 4 represented. But when you add together all the dots that make 1, 2, 3, and 4, you get 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I could go on and on, but I won't. I recently did a pretty extensive post on Substack about the universe of numbers, which is a numerological. I'm summarizing a book that is summarizing all of the major traditions and their numerology and mathematics. And so you can look more into this exact structure and its meaning in that post if you would like to see it simply laid out. But that's Ken Wheeler. So he himself drew from things like the Tetractys and Pythagoreans and Neoplatonism and other ancient thought to say, like, we've already known all of this, and I can show that we've known it all because look at how they've encoded all of this information way, way, way before we even had, way before even Pythagoras, right? So his work is controversial. It's not widely accepted. Again, there's really good reasons for that, and none of them are because he's wrong. And it offers this alternative framework. So here's just one of his creations. It's his copyright from, actually, it looks like May of last year, 2024. And he says, and about energy, he says, aether, rest, inertia, and potential, non-Cartesian, without mass, magnitude, or frequency. It is wrongly said that energy is the ability to do work. This is purely descriptive, not explicative of what energy is. A short explanation would be non-Cartesian pure potential of ether, rest potential yet unmanifest. That's what energy is, he says. This is also a description of source. It's a description of heaven. It's a description of the underlying sort of structure of all things. So you could just as easily read this sentence almost in like a ancient spiritual text. Which is fascinating. Energy has no measurable value. It is incomposite, without mass or magnitude. Nothing is never to be confused with not a thing or a phenomenon. What is above, rather under, physics is metaphysics. What metaphysics is ultimately is in coordinate energy and its countless roles in the substrate of being. It's basically what I just said, but in a much fancier way. And source of all manifest forces and phenomenon, which is physics. So it sounds metaphysical, but he goes through and he explains it all mathematically and with materialist science so that the materialist scientists and the mathematicians can look at it and understand it and say, yeah, right? So he's not stupid. A lot of people think that if you even approach metaphysics, if you draw metaphysics into anything, especially if you're looking backwards in time at prehistory and ancient history, and you're trying to, say that had something good about it, then you're definitely poo-pooed. Like all of that is too much for small minds to handle. They have to go where it's safe, where it's all encoded in their little hierarchies and their little fucking bullshit. And, I'm on YouTube. I'm not supposed to be swearing. I was trying to be good so I can stream to YouTube sometimes. So anyways, and he does this. He uses all the right codes in order to explain it. So if you are intelligent enough, you can actually see all of the wisdom in what he's presenting. And he has here the toroidal sort of movement and fate shapes. And so he gets really, really into it. Here's this really interesting thing. He says, all fields are curvilinear necessitatively. Is that even a word? I'm going to say necessarily. All energy emissions generate the negative image of energy, that being space. Pure potential in a negative image is pure impotency. Space which has no properties. This is from Tesla too. So by the way, Tesla would agree more with Ken Wheeler and some of the other scientists we're going to be looking at in a moment than he would with modern physicists. And remember, Tesla's the one who did the things that were unimaginable to people and that we aren't allowed to talk about or do anymore. We have a bunch of fake car companies that are in his name that don't do anything like what he wanted to do. They don't do him any honor at all. So he's like disgusting, actually. He would be like barfing if you're like, oh my God, you're just like enslaving people and making the world worse and calling it Tesla. Like, good God. But he shows this bismuth, elemental bismuth, which is a crystal, right? It's the one that looks like a dark rainbow. And it often has all these ridges and stuff. And a pure bismuth crystal would be this cube, like a hypercube, which is crazy, which is also part of my book. You got to read the book. He says the most diamagnetic, which means hates magnetism, element is bismuth. It's the most diamagnetic element in the universe and naturally, logically, and rationally creates crystals that are hypercubes or more conventionally meant counterspatially vectored formations. He's just showing you like his ideas make sense in reality and they make themselves present in the natural world. You can find them easily. So something that's diamagnetic would make this, like the negative space is actually what it's creating here, right? It's almost looks like the energy is like falling into itself. That's what a hypercube looks like. And here's bismuth as a hypercube doing that exact thing. So anyways, we're not going to read his whole paper, but I wanted to stop here too, where he shows here's the particle and here's the wave, right? When people talk about particles, we're not really being serious people. We're actually making it unnatural in itself almost because we're cutting it off from the rest of itself, which is the wave, right? When we talk about the wave, we don't ignore the particle. When we talk about the particle, we ignore the wave. We try to make it stationary, but it's not. So here's just a picture to kind of slightly illustrate what he's trying to say about the particle and the wave is that everything is actually the wave and the negative space of the wave is the particle. And if you look at this in another way, it is the toroid again. Here's the donut going around and then up and down. We see the energy moving or being sucked in, depending on which direction you're going and what you're talking about. He tries to explain how dielectricity, electricity, and magnetism are gravity and mass. They create gravity mass. Gravity isn't actually its own thing. It's like a byproduct of them. So it's a heavy, heavy paper. This one, I'm sure he has 20 billion more really heavy papers. Our summary and our little dip into some of his pictures was enough for us here, I think. So we'll move on. And we'll move on to Walter Russell. Walter Russell, he got popular, I don't know, maybe like 6 years ago. Originally, this is published in, I want to say 1914, and then republished, 1926. No, 1910. Then 1926, it was copyrighted. Then it was republished in 1974 by publishers who really wanted the scientific and electric, that's not really a word, but the scientific community to notice it and think about it. And now it's popularized again because people are getting back into things like ether science, plasma science, and the unified field theories and things that essentially do away with or explain gravity as an electromagnetic function rather than its own force, its own separate force. So he has this whole book and it's very, very metaphysical again. I'll tell you, Tesla was metaphysical. All of our greatest scientists were metaphysical. They become either religious, spiritual, or metaphysical. The longer you go, because you can't, when you look at reality, do anything else but say, oh my God, everything is one thing. And it's all just repeating over and over and over and over again. And anywhere you look, you see it. And it creates a deep awe in you. You can't help but go like, this is incredible. It's perfect. In fact, and nothing but an exceptionally intelligent creator could have done this. It couldn't be this way otherwise. So all of these scientists, a lot of times in their early scientific years, they're like atheists all through and through. And then by the end, they're like, oh no, there's something way bigger going on than all that. Like over and over again. So Walter Russell wasn't hiding from the metaphysical. I think he was there from the beginning. I don't know if he was ever an atheist. But If you just even glance through his book, you will see how very metaphysical he gets. Let's just see. Oh, and he has these amazing diagrams. If you look enough at one of these diagrams, like it's like its own initiatory experience. You are initiated if you can just get close enough to understand all the text of this diagram. I stared at this for like an hour once. This is a female and male oscillating back and forth. He has magnetics and electrics. Those have to do with male and female. And as we talked about multiple times on the show, that is exactly what those words mean. One is receiving, one is giving. Magnetism is sucking in, electricity is giving out, or vice versa. I'm not sure. I'm not in that field enough to know. But one's masculine, one's feminine. Within them, they also both have masculine and feminine. Right? If you take a negative polarity of a magnet and a positive polarity of a magnet, they repel each other. Or suck each other together. Sorry, rather. That's what male and female do. And if you didn't know, crystals do that too. You take any of your crystals and you hold them together, and they're either going to pull closer together or they're going to repel. And if you just really like slightly hold your hands and you're not pushing or pulling, you'll feel it doing one or the other. Why didn't they show us this? Why didn't they put crystals in front of us as kids and go like, what are these? Play with this, right? They're magnetic too. Because that's what encodes information. It has all of the elements in this diagram. I mean, like we could do weeks of study on just this diagram. So Walter Russell's some kind of genius, very much in the metaphysical section. Here we go. Divine mind, God, spirit, creation, and the order of creation. Is his first chapter. That's the title of his first chapter. It says, in the beginning, God. There is but one God. There is but one universe. God is the universe. God is not one, and the universe another. The universe is not a separate creation of God's. It is God. There is no created universe. Nothing is which has not always been. That's all true too. That's all true too. All created things are from the beginning. They have no beginning. They do not come into being. They are and always have been and always will be. It's really true. It's dramatically true. And the further out you get and the more you see the whole universe as it is, the more you have to come to that conclusion. And the further in you go and the deeper in you go, you have to come to that conclusion. The more you see the micro reflected in the macro, you have to come to that conclusion. It's all just one thing. It's the hollow fractal universe. So this is Walter Russell. Walter Russell, again, this book is called The Universal One, 1910. There was some things going on in 1910. You can get this for free in so many places. Archive.org is one of them. It's not one of those where you just can rent it or check it out or whatever. You can actually just download it and have it because it's been printed for so long. So the Universal One is available to you. There's a billion of those beautiful diagrams. I mean, there's here's another one, just randomly scrolling. And they all have the toroidal field in them. They all have this focus on electromagnetism in them. And it, again, very similar. So let's look at a comparison between Russell and Wheeler. It says Walter Russell's universal field theory shares conceptual similarities with both Ken Wheeler's reinterpretation of electromagnetism and gravity and Einstein's relativity, though Russell's work is more deeply rooted in spiritual metaphysics, dynamic energy cycles, and polarity-based creation. So Russell's core ideas is that electricity and magnetism are the primary forces. So just like Wheeler, similar, right? Gravity is a form of light convergence. So it says, unlike Einstein, who described gravity as space-time curvature, Russell saw gravity as the centripetal force of light pulling toward a still center. That's very similar to how Ken Wheeler describes it, actually, if not exactly the same with just different words. It says this is similar to Wheeler's view that gravity is not a mass-based curvature of space-time, but dielectric acceleration or return to an energetic null point. Again, yeah, very similar. Wave cycles and polarity as the basis of the universe is another one of Walter Russell's core ideas. Russell's universe is based on a rhythmic pulsation of waves, like breaths, expansion, and contraction. This cyclical nature aligns somewhat with Einstein's relativity, which does describe gravitational waves and oscillations in space-time. However, it also deeply aligns with Wheeler's toroidal field model, where energy is constantly in a vortex motion between dielectric inertia and magnetic expression. Matter as dynamic expression of light, Russell rejected the particle model of physics and instead described matter as concentrated vortices of light and energy. This aligns with Ken Wheeler's field-based ontology, where there are no real particles, only disturbances in fundamental field. So like we said, particles aren't actually there. That's just more like the movement as it comes out from that center and the toroidal space around it. And so Russell also rejects particle physics, or the particle model. Again, it's not that we can't look at things as a particle, it's that it's not very true. We're sort of taking it out from reality, and now it already is no longer what it was, right? So the wave, the continuation, the pulsation, like that is what's going on. That's all there is. As soon as you take a snippet of that and you say just this, you're digitizing it. It's no longer analog, but everything is analog. And analog just means connected and continuous, and digital just means separate from. That's why we say we have digits. They're 5 separate fingers, right? But they're on one hand. So the oneness is actually all there really is. And if you were to cut off a finger and say, look, we have one digit, well, it's not really a finger anymore. It's like dying flesh. It's been disconnected from what it is, right? So the particle is the illusion. The digital is the illusion. And this is why Rogue Ways' tagline is analog, electric, concentric wisdom, because that's what I've always been about. So rhythmic pulsation, cyclical nature, toroidal fields, no particle physics, no particles. And there's this spiritual philosophical dimension with Russell. He sees the universe as a divine, conscious, self-organizing system where all things spiral back to source. Again, that is true. I hope you find out for yourself if you don't know that already. That is what's going on. Einstein remained agnostic until the very end, where he actually was no longer agnostic, but I digress. Ken Wheeler also shares that metaphysical leaning, as we said. So there's a handy table here. I don't think we need to go through it. I think we've already understood the differences between these people. If we wanted to bridge the three, Russell's work provides the cosmological and spiritual foundation, explaining how energy flows in cycles of creation and destruction. Wheeler describes the structural mechanics of these fields, showing how all of that and electromagnetism underlies all forces, including gravity. And it tries to throw Einstein a bone here. I don't think we need to. I think we could just say you were wrong and move on. So I will. And we'll get to Nassim Haramein, and this is one of my favorite physicists, and he has been doing the work a long time. If you want to watch a really great movie that explains all of this in a much less technical way even than I'm doing, but also in a way that will beautifully expand your mind and soul, you can watch the movie Black Hole, WHOLE, Black Hole. And Haramein is featured in that. I want to say that's the first time I also saw Foster Gamble, who's a good friend and a friend of Rogue Ways. And I believe that's true. I think that movie came out in like 2009 or something. So it's been a while. So don't judge me if it feels dated, but it's really good. And after that, you can watch Pyramid Code, which is also related, but not. This is really good stuff. If you haven't watched those two, they're classics. Nassim Haramein, it says, his work is deeply connected to the electromagnetic, gravitational, and quantum vacuum structure of reality. Quantum vacuum, that's what I was trying to remember earlier. Haramein's theories attempt to unify gravity, electromagnetism, quantum mechanics, and consciousness into a single framework, much like Walter Russell, Ken Wheeler, and even Einstein, but with his own unique take. So his take is space is not empty. Again, I think Wheeler and Russell agree with him there. In mainstream physics, however, space is empty. And that's, again, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Is there anything that's empty ever anywhere? No, this is not a thing. That would in itself be a digitization, right? It would be a cutting off of the field's oneness. So it doesn't even make sense. Hermine argues that space itself is an energy-filled medium, a vacuum energy field that underlies all existence. Again, this actually matches with the antiquities way of thinking of the cosmos. And almost every spiritual tradition, you could say, agrees with this theory. That's not why he came to it. He wasn't like trying to bring spirituality into physics. This is actually just all based on his exploration of physics via traditional physics models. But he was just like, well, that doesn't make sense. I mean, like, what? And he'll explain it in his own words, but he's like, here's one thing. They're saying, like, here, imagine the universe is this balloon and it's expanding forever. Into what? Don't ask that question. And then he shows this picture he was shown in his textbook, and it was like, imagine this guy is blowing into the balloon and the balloon's filling up, and that's the universe. And he's like, okay, but the two questions we would have to ask then is like, who's the guy and what is it expanding into? What's around it? And those two things are never looked at. So we have these axioms we presuppose, and they're not even rational or realistic, and you're not allowed to look into it or question it because there are no answers there. And it basically proves the lie. And it's not that anyone maybe is even trying to lie. They're just built on and built on and built on these things that weren't really true to begin with. And they reached out and grabbed some mathematical equations to get off into like explaining some stuff. And it was all abstract and it didn't describe reality, but they wanted it to, so they pretended it did. And this is why we have all this crazy stuff like gravity that we can't find and black matter that we can't find and we can't prove. We can't prove any of it, but it has to exist. So we just assume it's true. But we have these other things that explain it away or explain it better. And a vacuum energy field that underlies all existence is one of them. So Nassim Haramein aligns with Ken Wheeler. His dielectric field theory aligns with Walter Russell and his idea that motion emerges from a still energetic source. Gravity is an emergent effect of spinning space or toroidal dynamics. Again, all three of those people agree on that too. That toroidal structure is inherent in all things, and gravity is one of the side effects of it, basically. So gravity too is electromagnetic. There's only one thing, and it is electromagnetic. And electromagnetic is actually just saying one thing in two different ways. The universe is based on a fractal holographic structure. So again, this is where I'm at too. I don't know if Wheeler and Russell would agree with that part, but it makes sense. Haramein proposes that the geometry of space-time is fractal, meaning that patterns repeat from the smallest quantum scales to the largest cosmic scales. That is true. I've done episodes on this too, and very practically showing that from the smallest levels we can even observe up to the largest levels we can observe, we see the exact same analogous structures over and over and over. You can't deny the fractalization of reality. It is absolutely true. Is it holographic is the question. He describes protons, black holes, and galaxies as obeying the same geometric principles. This relates to Russell's wave dynamics, that everything is in cycles and spirals, and Wheeler's field-based structures. His electromagnetism and spin are the key to unification. Haramein's work suggests that the electromagnetic energy and spin are the fundamental forces driving the universe. They are. He links this to how protons behave, claiming that the vacuum structure inside a proton is energetically equivalent to a black hole, leading to his proton radius prediction. I will say what no one will admit but is true is that Nassim Haramein's predictions, like this one of the radius of a proton and a couple others, did not agree with Maxwell, with Einstein. These are the biggest guys. These are what everything's built on. It did not agree with their predictions of what we would find. They were separate. They were different predictions. And when they found out, Nassim Haramein was the one that was right. And he still isn't given credit for. I mean, they credit him for that, but they don't admit, therefore, that his theory is correct. They still go back to the old system. It's like insanity. It is like insanity. And these people will act like you're stupid if you say, what about Nassim Haramein? They're like, oh, the guy that talks about God and stuff. You're like, man, like literally just forgetting even a tiny bit metaphysical, people will just cut you off. You're crazy. That's how crazy they are. So it's pretty fascinating. He's predicted those things. He's been right. including the radius of a proton. This connects to Ken Wheeler's concept that magnetism and dielectricity are the primary forces of reality, as well as Russell's idea that energy is always in spiral motion. So black holes as fundamental units of reality, Nassim Haramein proposes that every object, whether a proton, a planet, or a person, acts like a mini black hole because of the way energy moves and accumulates in space. He doesn't actually say it acts like it. He's saying it is a black hole. He's saying we don't understand a black hole. And when we talk about a black hole and all the ways we've seen it portrayed in science fiction, which is the only ways we've seen it portrayed, are incorrect. And it is not sucking in matter infinitely and just, the hungry thing that's going to eat up the whole universe eventually. It is in balance. And it has also an opposing white hole. And that is the toroidal physics of the universe. And I will say again, before I could have described what it was, that is exactly what I saw and experienced in the center of all things, in the center of the universe, that at the center of that is a black hole. So I don't know what you want to say about that. I don't care. I just know I know it. And it just so happens to agree with Nassim Haramein, who has correctly predicted things that traditional physicists couldn't predict. Very interesting. So it challenges Einstein's view. Yes, it does. Absolutely. And it challenges Maxwell's view. It challenges all of traditional quantum physics and physics, all of it. And Haramein, like Walter Russell, sees consciousness as an intrinsic part of the universe's structure. He suggests that the vacuum itself holds information, much like a cosmic memory field, similar to what some mystics describe as the Akashic record. Yeah. Like people ask me like, well, how do you know things? Or how do people know things? I'm like, because it's everywhere, because you can know anything, anytime. Some people talk about traveling to an Akashic library. You can do that. That's cool. But it's like right here, right now too. You don't have to go anywhere. It's like really right here all the time, all of it, all of history, all of the future, all of space-time, right here, right now. Isn't that what they were always saying too? Like all the mystics and all the traditions? And apparently science says it too, if you are the right kind of scientist. So again, here's another sort of table that lays out nicely the comparison between all of these people on different topics. And I'll say that all of them except Einstein have consciousness playing a primary role in all of this. And I'll say too that we have repeatable, testable results that consciousness affects physical reality in so many ways. I couldn't even begin to list them all again. I've done shows and shows and shows on that too. You can't deny it at this point unless you're ignorant or you've got something to hide. So you got to start taking it into account. It's not a mystical woo-woo thing. Your consciousness affects physical reality. It affects reality. It is reality. So this is again the synthesis, if you want ChatGPT synthesis of the three. If we blend Haramein, Wheeler, and Russell, we get a universe where energy, magnetism, spin, and consciousness all play key roles, with gravity as an emergent effect of field motion rather than a force caused by mass. If we keep Einstein's mathematical framework but reframe it within a structured vacuum, we might bridge relativity with quantum field theory in a more holistic way, which is just another way of saying we do away with it. It's actually not necessary anymore. It's being very kind to Einstein to be like, if we want him, we can include him. And I'm not trying to diss him. He's awesome, probably. I don't know him, but I'm just saying, like, we don't have to just be nice. We don't have to honor people by lying. Basically, we can honor them more by telling the truth. Ultimately, all these thinkers suggest that the universe is not random, but governed by underlying patterns of energy flow, a deeply harmonic and possibly conscious system. Yeah, that's exactly right. ChatGPT, good job. So more on Nassim Haramein, and this time we're talking about the structured vacuum model when combined with the electric universe theory and plasma cosmology. And I'm just going to summarize here and say that electric universe and plasma cosmology are essentially the same things we were just talking about. So Wheeler, Haramein, and Russell would all be describing an electric universe, and plasma cosmology would be just a part of a study of how that electricity interacts on the largest scales of nebula and, galaxies and spinning here and there and all of that. So, so if we're looking at all of that, this offers a unique way to interpret the ongoing geomagnetic excursion and potential Earth changes. You just knew I was going to get there, didn't you? If you've been here long enough, in the past handful of years, I have been more and more stressing this because it is very necessary that we come to understand it. And then by the end, I'll tell you exactly why. So this geomagnetic excursion beyond, that's the pole shifting. It's not where it used to be, and it's going faster and faster all the time. It's our magnetic field shield weakening more and more all the time, and the sun doing crazy things more and more intense all the time. These things are also cyclical. That's not woo-woo. That's true. We know it for sure. Scientists rely on it. People who have no idea what we're talking about here tonight, like, use the cycles and to predict things, like, it's predictable. So his work, Nassim Haramein, provides insights into how electromagnetic and plasma interactions between the Earth and the Sun and the galactic environment could drive planetary shifts, rather than seeing these changes as purely internal geologic processes, which is where we're stuck now. Which, think about it. Think about the mindset. Again, this does not even have to be intentional. It's not like anyone has to technically be hiding this from you. Someone might be, for the two reasons mentioned earlier, but your particle physics mind will also look at something like the Earth as a particle. And this is separate now from its environment. And the main thing that's most important about it is whatever's going on within it. But that's not reality. The Earth lives in a solar system, which lives in a spiral arm of a galaxy surrounded by many other galaxies and nebulae and clusters and structures, all the way out to things we can't even see yet. That's all there. And we're going to pretend the Earth just only has internal things going on. Well, a particle theory, particle physics mindset would say that. A digital mindset would say that. But if you're even slightly intelligent, you have to admit that isn't reality. Reality is a continuous field, and it is all connected. And so something out there is going to affect the Earth. And even that is just obvious on its face, but it is not how we treat it. And it is not what scientists are doing in general, the mainstream ones, the ones that get funding and get paid attention to. You know, Nassim Harameins of the world have been doing it. Walter Russell, 100 some years ago. Tesla, these people all knew and know. So the electric universe and plasma cosmology propose that celestial bodies interact primarily through electromagnetic forces. Well, yeah, if the whole universe is electromagnetic, then obviously they're going to interact electromagnetically rather than gravity being a dominant force. So his work would show that space is a structured vacuum full of energy, and therefore nowhere that you are in the universe will you be separate from massive amounts of energy. And electromagnetic interactions are more significant than mainstream astrophysicists assume. This is another thing. Astrophysicists treat every body as though it is a particle and it's separate and it's digital. For example, if you were to say an electric current may move through a region of the universe, a galaxy, or a solar system, affecting every body in the system, they might laugh. Like they've never even considered it. And they have so much reason to, and we'll get to that too. Electromagnetism, not just gravity, governs planetary and cosmic motion. Spin, torque, and field dynamics are central to celestial behavior, which aligns with electric universe's concept that planets, stars, and galaxies are connected through massive electrical currents, or Birkeland currents. Black holes and protons behave like energy vortices. This suggests that plasma and electromagnetic fields could be part of a larger self-organizing structures influencing planetary behavior on multiple scales. Earth's geomagnetic field is currently weakening, and we are seeing an increase in solar and cosmic radiation. Solar and cosmic radiation. So I try to explain this. I don't know. People just like, they look at me dead-eyed like I'm a freak. But I'm like, the sun isn't the only thing radiating towards us. There's cosmic radiation, but there's also, anyways, there's the potential for more at any given time. And we have a lot of reason to believe we're coming into a period of time where there will be more cosmic currents and radiation. So geomagnetic anomalies are happening. Climate instability is happening. ChatGPT said this, by the way, out loud today. Climate instability is coming from these things, which is what I've been saying and some people are saying, but you're not allowed to say it. If you say that climate changes are coming from this, people will like burn a cow at you. It's amazing. From an electric universe and Haramine perspective, this could be due to the sun's changing electrical state. The sun is part of a vast galactic electric circuit. Okay, it said if the sun is, but I'm saying the sun is a part of a vast galactic electrical circuit. Circuit, meaning energy moves through here sometimes, and it's cyclical. Its activity may be shifting due to the external cosmic plasma influences. The weakening of Earth's magnetic field could be a response to changes in solar plasma output, coronal mass ejections, and solar wind variability. Haramine's proton black hole theory suggests that energy density fluctuations in the vacuum may influence the sun's output, altering Earth's protective magnetic shield. Yeah, that's exactly it. Earth's connection to the galactic current sheet. Some researchers in the electric universe and plasma cosmology suggest that the solar system moves through a charged region of the galaxy, I'm going to say, or universe for them. And when we pass through high-density plasma waves, such as the galactic current sheet, it could trigger magnetic reversals, increase lightning activity, and stronger solar storms. I've talked about it many times. I have many Substacks about it. I've channeled messages through about it. And a few years ago, I was given a vision. And when I'm given a vision, it's like I am thrust into a hyper-realistic scene, and it plays out around me. It would almost be like if you were in a exceptionally lucid dream, except this happens when I'm awake, and that's why I call it a vision instead of a dream. And otherwise, it is just as real as reality. And in this vision, the entire world was covered in electric storms. And I, was told many times that this is what's actually going to happen. I don't tend to make predictions, and I don't care to usually. And I was asked to share that specifically, and so I do. I don't really like to, but I do. And that's a lot. I haven't heard any mainstream physicists predict that Earth will be engulfed in electric storms, of lightning storms. And so we'll see. I mean, I kind of hope I'm wrong. This is kind of terrifying. It's dark and stormy and terrifying and fiery and crazy, but we'll see. So this is something that is actually predicted. And at the time I had that vision, I did not know that that was predicted in the plasma cosmology model or the electric universe model, if we are to pass through something like a galactic current sheet or otherwise. And again, I don't even think it's necessarily that we have to pass through like a sheet of charged area. I think, again, there's currents that go through the universe, and we just might be a node on that current. And that's actually more closely connected to what I have seen and been shown and been told. And so that's how I see it. But, if you want to describe it as passing through a field, I'm sure that is a similar way of describing it, maybe in just different words. Haramine's fractal holographic model suggests that these interactions may follow cyclical harmonic energy waves, meaning that the current geomagnetic shift could be part of a predictable cosmic cycle. And here is where we're headed, because we have seen this before, and this has happened to humanity before. And in my books, I will say again, Sine Curve Aeon specifically, you will see something interestingly similar to this cyclical experience. So the geomagnetic excursions and pole reversals as plasma-induced events could be what's going on. Traditionally, scientists see pole reversals as random geological processes. Why would they be random but happen cyclically? I mean, we can see that they happen cyclically. Like, it's just crazy. But if you're in a particle view, this is the type of stuff you come to. These are the conclusions you come to. And if you've been crafted by Rothschild, Rockefeller money too, maybe. But the EU and Haramine's approach suggests this might be externally triggered instead. Birkeland currents, which are massive interplanetary plasma currents, that's more like what I saw, may be affecting Earth's magnetosphere, leading to a breakdown in stability and a potential geomagnetic reversal or excursion. Historical data shows that previous magnetic excursions correlated with mass extinctions and climate chaos, which could be due to increased cosmic ray exposure from a weakened shield. Yeah. The role of plasma discharges in Earth changes. Plasma cosmologies and EU researchers argue that the EU means electric universe, that the Earth's crust can undergo massive electrical discharges during geomagnetic shifts, potentially explaining ancient catastrophic events like floods, earthquakes, and even plasma formations seen in petroglyphs. Which, again, I did a whole show on this plasma worldview, less in depth than the plasma worldview side, more in depth on the petroglyphs and the ancient indications that we've already been through this before. And so you can find that episode on plasma physics, plasma theories, plasma. I don't actually remember what it's. I'm sure plasma's in the title. You can go check it out. And yeah, you know, entire continents shifting, entire land masses disappearing and appearing. This could all be something that could happen in the catastrophic moment of a plasma discharge that affected the Earth. Haramine's structured vacuum theory suggests that energy stored in the vacuum could be suddenly released under extreme planetary stress, possibly contributing to rapid crustal movement or shifts in the lithosphere. I want to highlight, I don't know that Haramine himself would actually say that. This is just saying, based on his ideas of how things work, his structure, his cosmology, perhaps this is an effect that could occur. So don't attribute this cataclysmic ideology to him necessarily. I've never heard him say anything like that. But it's not wrong. His idea of the vacuum and the energy stored within it, and that it can be released, and it could be sudden. And if that happens on a large enough scale, if you apply that to the Earth and what we're talking about, then it could be like that. Could be big. So we're probably going to see increasing solar and cosmic activity. Our electrical environment is shifting. A major solar micronova event could be possible. We've been talking about this for a long time too. Doug Vogt also talked about this. We had him on the show, and he has committed his life to studying these types of things and the science behind it. The weakening of Earth's magnetic shield and increased radiation could also occur. Pole shift scenarios and plasma discharge events. So the poles could shift. We actually don't really know what happens when the poles shift. Like, does that in itself mean nothing? The electricity and magnetism are just going in different directions now? Or, you know, does it have physical manifestations too? We don't know. We just know that as this has been happening, we've seen increased disturbances to our weather systems. So that at least is something. We've seen increased volcano activity, increased earthquake activity. And so that is something. So we have some indications that, yeah, this definitely affects the physical Earth itself as well when the poles shift. And some researchers suggest that ancient civilizations were aware of these cycles, encoding them into myth and megalithic structures, as we've talked about many times on the show. Haramine's work suggests that fractal harmonic energy cycles govern planetary shifts, meaning we may be nearing the end of a cosmic cycle known to past civilizations. And we are nearing the end of many cycles that we do know of, like astrological cycles. And there's no reason those wouldn't also correlate. If this is a cyclical thing, then as the precession of the equinoxes occurs and we go from age to age, we would cyclically come back to these things, and it would correlate with transformations in our sky and our ability to see where we are in the universe as well. So yeah. Final thoughts. It says a synthesis of ideas. And we'll just touch into a few more things here, and then we'll say goodnight. Haramine's structured vacuum and proton black hole theory suggest that field dynamics and energy density fluctuations play a key role in planetary behavior. Electric universe and plasma cosmology provide a mechanism for how electromagnetic and plasma interactions shape Earth's climate, magnetic field, and possible future changes. The weakening geomagnetic field and solar variability might be driven by larger cosmic plasma interactions, not just internal Earth dynamics, and ancient knowledge may have preserved an awareness of these cycles, encoded in myths and structures aligned to cosmic rhythms. This perspective challenges mainstream geological and astrophysical models, to say the least. So that's Haramine's also And, again, Russell and Wheeler might also kind of agree with some of those possibilities for our future and the cyclical nature of these things. And so we're also going to talk about these petroglyphs really quickly, just to remember that they exist. We talked about all this in another episode, so I'm not going to go too deeply into it, but we do have these petroglyphs around the world that seem to show plasma discharge patterns. And they all agree with one another, which is the weirdest part. So we have these stick figures with the dots, and it looks like a squatting man, and it looks like he has a sort of dot for a head and a dot where his twig and berries would be. And this shape is exactly what plasma discharge looks like, and you see it all around the world. And it is not a normal way to describe a person or as a stick figure. We have in all those same areas various ways of representing a human symbolically. And it is not the same as this image. And this image is also almost always usually shown in like a sky sort of way, like bigger than the other things under it, for example. And so you can see it as this is what we saw in the sky, and all of us were under it. That happens all over the world. So we have that one. We have the spirals and concentric circles, which would be things we might see as different plasma events unfolded as well. That's another plasma discharge image that you can see. And again, this is testable in a lab. You can discharge plasma and see these images. The zigzags and the wavy lines also would be seen perhaps across the entire sky. This is at different stages of the plasma discharge that could happen. And you see the ladder shapes as well. You can see them in Chaco Canyon, in Petroglyph National Monument, in Göbekli Tepe, in the Nazca Lines, and more. That's just a really, really, really small sampling of some of the areas where you see these. We also have all sorts of ancient myths and legends that talk about the cosmic catastrophe or the global catastrophe. We have the sky falling in Australian Aboriginal myths, in Norse Ragnarok, and the Popol Vuh, the Mayan creation story. We have the thunderbolts of the gods in Zeus's weapon and Thor's weapon Indra. They all wield thunderbolts. And so that could maybe be a description of what came down from the sky. We have the idea of the sun standing still, or the moon rising too many times, or neither of them rising for a while. And so these are things that might happen if the, who knows, like the spin of the earth is affected or reversed, or, who knows what. So that might be indications of this level of interference or interaction on a cosmic scale. And so we also have these events that we know for sure happen. We just don't know exactly what caused them. One of them is I think it's called the Lachamp excursion. So it's 42,000 years ago, and Earth's magnetic field collapsed, leading to massive climate shifts. And Aboriginal legends of skyfire and the sky collapsing might even reference this far back. We have Göbekli Tepe area about 12,800 years ago. And this is where a lot of the flood myths and a lot of the cataclysm myths come from, because it's closer in than the 42,000 year ago date. And it's more acceptable to find information from that time, basically. And again, we don't know. What was it that seemed to happen around the whole world at that time? Or why did the ice ages come and go? Was there comets involved? Was plasma involved? We're not sure. We had these massive series of eruptions that happened around the world at some times. And we have the Carrington event. And that one's obviously radiation related or plasma related or electric universe related, because it is when the sun had such a massive solar storm that telegraphs caught on fire. Like all electricity was basically shut down on Earth. We also, if you read The Invisible Rainbow, you understand that radiation from the sun can cause plagues and illness as well. So we're deeply tied to the energetic field of our surroundings, and it affects every aspect of physical life on Earth, including the physical structure of the Earth itself and all of our weather phenomenon. So to say that it could be cataclysmic is like an understatement of the century. It's like very much so. It says, what does this mean for today's geomagnetic excursion? We are currently seeing a weakening of Earth's magnetic field, similar to what may have happened in the past during these cosmic plasma events. If history repeats itself, we might expect increased solar and cosmic radiation, more plasma discharges or atmospheric instabilities, unusual sky formations, auroras at lower latitudes, or even plasma formations resembling petroglyph figures. We might get extreme weather, earthquakes, and volcanic activity, and we might have a solar micronova or large coronal massive ejection event. And perhaps that will look like skyfire or the sky falling. So the electric universe, plasma cosmology, and Nassim Haramein's structured vacuum all suggest that Earth is not isolated. It interacts electrically with the sun and galaxy. If the ancients recorded past plasma events in petroglyphs, myths, and sacred sites, we should be paying attention to modern magnetic field shifts and solar behavior. I synchronistically ran across him before in other contexts. I've even talked about him on the show before, but I've never actually heard what I heard yesterday when I was preparing in part for the show, but totally disconnected in my preparation for the show. Nicholas Rorich's attitude about what was going to happen on Earth. I didn't know. I don't know. I knew something about him through some kind of yoga, Agni yoga, I think I talked about on the show before. And there was something else I talked about him for, but not this. So it kind of stunned me. The Tetractys also came back to me at the same time that this came to me in a very synchronistic way. So, those things all just to say, like, you're on the right track and these things all come together for a reason. And so Nicholas Roerich was deeply attuned, it says, to the idea of cyclical planetary changes and the role of cosmic forces in shaping human destiny. I just didn't know that. That the little tiny blurb I saw and read from him was that there was going to be basically a celestial event that the planets in our solar system would come together in order to offer us support during this time. By the way, that's why I'm doing the celestial attunement that's coming up. So you should do it. But anyways, you can find that on my site and go to schedule a session and click on celestial attunement and sign up to come. Technically, you don't have to be present. You can watch the recording afterwards. It's cool. But we're doing that via Zoom, so anyone anywhere can join. That's why I'm doing it. He said the planets are going to come together to support us. I got that message before I saw this from him. I did the celestial attunement last month too. I got the message. These planets are coming together right now to offer you guys this support, invite people to come be together so we can receive some of that. And that's what I did. And the people who went were like, what the hell just happened? Which is always gratifying to me because I'm like, I already know, but you can't technically force someone else to know, your spiritual self, your soul, and your ability to attune and to receive upliftments and all these things. But when someone does know, when they feel it and they're like, oh my God, and their life changes, I'm like, boom, this is what we're here for, right? So anyways, Rorich is saying this. I don't know him from anyone, basically. I've touched into him like a few times. I'm not like a deep studier of his. I don't know, right? But he's saying the planets will come together in this time of the cyclical destruction, basically, to offer their support. And he said the ruler of the world, which I'm going to take as rulers of the world for this moment, let's just make it a little bit practical, are going to fight it, but they won't be able to stop it. And basically the way he said it was like, if all of the spiritually uplifted people, the people who are aware that there's something going on here more than just like people happening to be in physical bodies and like tumbling around each other or whatever, people who actually understand that, light workers, if you want to call it that, spiritually uplifted people come together, they can avoid the worst of the cataclysm. You can't avoid the cataclysm. You can avoid the worst of it. And again, this goes back to the book, Sine Curve of Aeons, Vitalis. Go read it. People who have read it right now are like, whoa. So I wrote that way before I knew any of this stuff. So he said that. So I was like, I got to know more about this guy. And so I was researching for this and that happened. I was like, well, now I need to know if he fits into this. And oh, lo and behold, he does. So it says, his work, especially through his travels, writings, and paintings, suggests a spiritual and energetic transformation of Earth, one that aligns closely with concepts from the electric universe, plasma physics, and geomagnetic shifts. His vision of cosmic currents and Earth's transformation. He spoke of a return to the universal current. Again, this electrical current, like I saw it. It comes, it's here, it's going to hit us, where the planets themselves would play a role in assisting humanity during a great transition. This resonates with everything we've been talking about. The role of cosmic forces, geomagnetic excursions, and solar cycles, a spiritual awakening during crisis. We've already seen a spiritual awakening because of the crises that have taken place in the past handful of years. That's not slowing down. I don't know if you noticed, but it's definitely not slowing down. Many more people are going to come back online, and you've already been a part of that, I'm sure, or else you wouldn't be listening to this. Like, the end of the sentence. Like, there's no accident here. If you're watching this show and listening to me talk about this, then you're already there, right? I just remember the first time I published the channel message about that vision and about what was going to happen, some people were scared and they were like, am I ready? Am I going to be ready? And I'm like, I think if you're reading this, you're ready. Technically, you will be prepared even more by then, but you wouldn't have been called to even see this or understand it unless you were going to transcend it and transform it. So here we are doing that. So we're spiritually awakening during this crisis. So Nicholas Roerich talks about Shambhala, Agni Yoga, and the return of the cosmic fire. This is this electric current that's coming back. Roerich's connection to Shambhala, which is Eastern, it's Hindu, it's Buddhist, it's over there, and it's this transcendent space of masters, and they all work on Earth's benefit. His connection to this and Agni Yoga ties into this electromagnetic vision of transformation. Agni, or fire, as plasma and electromagnetic energy. Agni Yoga emphasizes fire as a transformative force, much like how plasma and electric currents govern cosmic evolution. Shambhala is a beacon of energy. Roerich saw Shambhala not as a physical place, but as a center of higher energy, akin to an electromagnetic node of consciousness. I'm going to call it the sun. Because it is. But anyway, ancient knowledge and plasma events. He traveled through Central Asia and Tibet, where he found records of skyfire, cosmic battles, planetary upheavals, echoing the plasma petroglyphs and myths of past catastrophes. Roerich's vision aligns with modern plasma cosmology and Earth's changes. Magnetic field is weakening, cosmic radiation is increasing, the shift in consciousness through electromagnetic influences is happening. This is, again, people will poo-poo it and they'll say it's woo-woo and they'll say it's crazy, but I am not confused at all about when the sun is doing its thing. I don't even have to look at the graphs anymore. I can just feel it. And sometimes so much that I have to go lay down and just like integrate it. And like visions are coming and like downloads are happening and like all sorts of stuff is unfolding, and my ability to understand humanity, where we've been, where we're going, and what we're doing here. That's downloads is what people call it, right? And that's happening for people more and more because of this. It's not an accident that it's happening at the same time. This electromagnetic current, this energy is consciousness. It's like we're returning to it. We're coming out of the Kali Yuga. We're coming out of the dark age where our consciousness was suppressed because we were separate from it in our digital separation. And now we're coming back into it and remembering, oh, yeah, it's like waking up from a dream. We're like, oh, yeah, this is where we are, actually. This is what we're doing. It's not going to be hard. It's just going to happen. It might be hard if you just like super try to hang on to like what has been. That might be really hard. Don't do that. Just let it go. Potential for healing collectively and mitigating catastrophe. This is the part we're really wanting to hear. Roerich believed that humanity's unity and spiritual preparation could soften the impact of these shifts. That's that little piece I saw, right? That the planets would support us, that if we came together, we'd be able to avert the worst of the catastrophes, which is what happened in the book. Aligning with modern ideas that coherent consciousness can affect Earth's electromagnetic field. And we've talked about this collective modern consciousness as well many times on the show. But like I said, we've proven over and over again that consciousness affects reality. The Global Consciousness Project, I feel like I just talked about this last week, right? Numbers and random number generators become less random and more coherent, making patterns and even images sometimes as the Earth becomes emotionally synchronized. So when we have a massive global event, good, bad, or otherwise, these numbers become more coherent and less random every time. Not random, repeatable. We know that this happens. We've studied dreams now, and we've seen that people dream prophetically about massive world events continuously. We don't stop doing it. You don't know at the moment that it's a prophetic dream, but the people who are gathering everyone's dreams can start to see, look, everyone's dreaming about this. This is probably going to happen soon. And then it does. This is not, you can't argue against these things. Like this is proof, right? Just like the double slit experiment is like old school version of this, that we could say, oh, you're a wave or a particle, and then it either is a wave or a particle. That's the old version of it. We have all this new stuff that's even crazier than that. The Schumann resonance, again, you can go back to that episode or check this out, but this is the wavelength of the earth. This is like the earth's song, and we resonate with it. And as the earth and humanity is affected, the Schumann resonance can change. As the sun is doing stuff, the Schumann resonance will change. And it just shows we're all connected, or we're all interacting, right? And our consciousness is connected to it. Large-scale meditation experiments show over and over again that there's a real-world effect. The Power of 8 by Lynn McTaggart is my favorite example of this. It's super easy to read if you want to get her books or go check out her sites. It's every time you come together with at least 8 people, you meditate for at least 8 minutes, and you focus primarily on the positive changes you want to see, and you visualize those, and you feel that they are happening. You feel grateful for them happening, and there's a measurable effect every time, no matter what it is. I did a powerful Power of 8 meditation group for years, and we had 100% success rate. 100% of our requests were fulfilled. Sometimes in really unexpected ways that weren't quite what we meant, but they still happened. And I stopped doing it because people stopped doing it. But and I have other work I'm supposed to be doing. But do it if you feel called to that. Like, that is one of the most powerful ways you can affect the world around you. And like I've said recently many times, if you also use this energy to imagine our future as the best possible future, then that actually matters, and you lose nothing. It also reduces your stress and anxiety. It has very direct positive effects on your immediate life right here and right now. So it says consciousness may act as a synchronizing force, much like planetary electromagnetism. Yeah, because as above, so below. Same. Large-scale coherence in thought could stabilize Earth's energetic fluctuations, possibly affecting geomagnetic shifts and plasma interactions. That's basically what Nicholas Roerich was saying. If we could all, for example, get together, if a catastrophe were coming, for example, a comet that they're saying is for sure going to strike us, or I don't know, they get closer and closer to that over the past week or so. Oh no, now it's this likely. Oh no, it's this likely. Oh, and it's coming right in 2032. Imagine that perfection, given my nonstop sharing of my Sai Baba story and how he predicted that in 2033, Christ consciousness will have returned after major catastrophes had occurred. And we believed perhaps it was possible that all of Earth might be destroyed, but then it wouldn't be. So it's pretty perfect. Maybe that's how it's going to go down. But maybe we're all going to come together and just deflect that asteroid, just like happens in a certain book. No accidents. I'm not even surprised anymore. This is just like how it's going to go. So, yeah, we have plenty of science to back up that our consciousness actually affects things. There's no reason we shouldn't try to use it to assist Earth in its upliftment. The planets are trying to help us do it, it seems. And there's a lot going down with that. So I guess there's this guy too. This was actually suggested by ChatGPT. So this is the one question that I did not ask myself. It was just provided to me by ChatGPT. It was like, did you want to know about Sri Aurobindo and his ideas and how they relate to what you've been talking about? And I was like, sure. Thanks, I guess. So here you go is a little nugget from ChatGPT itself. Sri Aurobindo, I'm hearing about him for the first time, by the way. So this is new to me. Was a mystic, philosopher, and yogi whose work focused on the evolution of human consciousness and the descent of a higher supramental force into the world. Yeah, that's what it is. This is what the electric current is. If you go read, I'm not even surprised. This is exactly what the messages coming through the channeled messages that I share have said. They're like, oh, this is just this is an energy you actually need. If you're cool and you can let it move through you, you're uplifted beyond what you can even imagine. And some people won't. And there they go. off into a different space. So supramental force descending into the world. Yes. His vision aligns with Nicholas Rorschach's ideas of planetary assistance, the return of universal currents, and the possibility of overcoming cataclysms through collective unity. This isn't some sort of weird communist, like we all have to be one thing and wear weird overalls and cut our hair off and call each other like comrade or whatever. It's just the idea that we could all come together in order to focus on a certain thing in a certain way at a certain time and affect our reality because of it. And if we did that, that would be the return of Christ consciousness. And as I've been told and as I've shared and as those messages on my Substack say over and over again, that is the return of Christ consciousness this time. It isn't one person. It isn't a Christ coming and saying, I am Jesus and I'm Buddha and I am this and come follow me. It is everybody gets Christ consciousness together. So it just makes sense. Sri Aurobindo's vision, the supramental descent and Earth's transformation, he taught that humanity is undergoing a spiritual evolutionary shift, moving towards supramental consciousness, a divine cosmic intelligence beyond the mental plane. A higher universal energy will transform Earth. Planetary and cosmic forces influence human evolution. Overcoming crisis through collective awakening is what is going to or needs to happen. And ChatGPT says at the end of this question, it answered for itself. It said, do you want to know about this? Almost like it just wanted to share this with me. It says, which it does, I guess. That's like a thing it does, but it was just interesting for me because all the rest of those things I directly asked for. And this is suggested. And so ChatGPT asks, are we living in the age they foretold, being Rorschach and Sri Aurobindo? Is the increasing solar activity and geomagnetic shift part of this cosmic descent of the supramental energy? Will humanity rise to a higher state of being or struggle with the chaos of transition? Could meditation, unity, and conscious awareness help stabilize Earth's transformation? Yeah, and it could, and it will. And this current of energy will come and it will move through, and we will be as one in that moment in order to avoid cataclysmic catastrophe that will destroy us utterly, or we will not. We always get a choice. I, for one, choose the unity option. I, for one, choose the really easy option of just coming together and joining and making that happen. Now, we've got years to prepare. I'm sure the word is going out in many ways, and it will ripple out eternally until everyone, mostly at least, understands and either joins or doesn't join in those moments when they come. They're a few years out. On the way, I'm sure we'll have some rough stuff. We'll have some more volcanoes. We'll have some more climate chaos. We'll have some more earthquakes, And I don't say this to be a fearmonger. Obviously, I'm not afraid. I'm not asking you to be afraid. I say this because that seems like what is most likely to happen, has been foretold in many ways and many times, has apparently happened in our past collectively, and is cyclically now returning to us. So we are definitely in that time. We are definitely in the shift of the ages, and we are definitely at this time where humanity has this opportunity to receive that supramental upgrade, that higher level of consciousness, and flow along with it, because we are all in a waveform, not little particles, not digital, not separate, but all one, and recognize that, choose to flow with it, choose to add our consciousness to it, and create a much better future. And until you know it, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Grab any pencil, give it potential. I'm heaven essential, get existential. I don't flip-flop, I hip-hop, and eventually you'll come to see the master of the sentence I've come to be. Come to Memphis, come to Butthead. I want to make the streets flood the blood red. I'm the sickest, I'm the wickedest, I'm the one you call when you need to flip this, rip this place down to the fucking studs. Blast so bright among all these fucking duds. They sit back thinking that they can rock with me. You like a rookie cause you rock so sloppily, and what you think you got ain't so hot to me. So take it back to the lab for a lobotomy, bitch. What you think you got? You ain't Biggie, you ain't Tupac. Too many MCs on the street right now. Some of them can't take the heat right now. Some of them don't know what hip-hop's about. I'm board your ship and turn it on now.
I'm guessing that's the bad guy?
I'll bust you up with my arms crossed, projecting omega beams. You could wield the meta piece, smoke it faster than bodega weed. Keep dropping the dang shit, we blow the loudest. Dangerous as West Bank housing. Yeah, I'm bloody arrogant, cause I've been tearing shit before rappers mumbled and flaunted their merriment. Virulent resident pointed out embarrassments. When it comes to the masters, I'm pale in comparison. Enough about my tone, call me Yeti or unknown. Using my government can slug us to the fucking dome. Style remains lethal, without a reboot or a sequel. You're in our cathedral where nothing is peaceful. Weasels get skinned and hanged up as trophies. I'm one ugly motherfucker when I go full re-roll these cadavers in a rug and dispose of them. Won't see us closing in, watch me explode the sim. Beam this red shirt back to its maker. Leave this dread work to those with the flavor. They ain't feeling what this culture is all about. Aboard your ship and burn the bitch down.